I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Maggie Thompson is presenting the work titled The Book of Knowledge, The Keys of Enoch, written by J.J. Hurtak. Maggie Thompson is not validating nor supporting Hurtak's views, epiphanies, visions, beliefs, or words. Maggie Thompson is simply presenting the work as written and is attempting to translate this extraordinarily esoteric work to a common vernacular and understanding. Further, Maggie Thompson understands this work to be solely concerning the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and while Hurtak views his work to be the key or keys to uniting all the world's people under one religion, namely Abrahamic, Maggie Thompson does not support this premise whole cloth. However, this work does give depth and insight into the connection of physics, cosmology, biology, and spirituality, which, for the seeker of divine truth, can be invaluable for the discovery of one's place in the universe, and that may be under the hierarchy of Yahweh, the Ancient of Days, or a hierarchy that exists above or beside such deities, or none altogether. Maggie Thompson implores all seekers of knowledge to, letter A, not accept what a person of authority tells you without validation. This includes looking at critiques and the opposing views with an open mind. Letter B, accept that religion, as well as science and politics, is presented as a means of indoctrination and is always presented with the biases of the overall field or system, the authors of texts, and the presenter, whose goals are to convince you of the, quote, truth, end quote, of their premise or premises. Letter C. It is possible to take insight, truths, and information from a biased work. Any body of work for the purpose of deeper meaning and knowledge must be carefully excavated and carved to glean wisdom. And letter D. No work or bodies of work that is believed by a large group or populace of people should be dismissed out of hand simply because you do not believe it. We live in a diverse time where religious belief takes center stage in the governing of the collected masses. To truly understand the barriers and gateways to your personal success and fulfillment, you must accept that believers of any kind can and will do what is necessary to meet their goals. All right, now that we got all the disclaimers out of the way. Good grief. Okay, so we're going to talk about key 2-0-8, pages 244 to 251. This is the power of the Elohim. So this is a big one. But before we get started, let's say hi to some folks in here. Adric is first. He says it's on. Auntie says hi with the peace sign. That's my favorite auntie. Eddie is here. Us to you as well. Armando is here. Peace to you. Adric is giving the hashtag Pivot Point Wednesday. Cynical is here. Peace to you as well. And Adrian says, let's go. Okay, so this is a long key. Doesn't it seem like they're getting longer? Okay, but it's long. Okay. So he says, the keys to future biology and exobiology Excuse me while my phone goes off. The keys to future biology and exobiology are given in the quote, power of Elohim, end quote. The throne energy, which extends itself through many time cells and has, in universes of the higher evolution, the ability to extend mind body and create super spectrum species, say that 10 times fast, from one, quote, light parent body into a multitude of time cells, geometries, and beings, end quote, all synchronized as embodiments of the same mind with, quote, different faces of time, end quote, so as to cover the face of a light universe with many different time cells, but to govern, quote, the membranes of universes with luminaries functioning in species, end quote, in the, quote, power of Elohim, end quote. The next universe understands and experiences itself as the, quote, Benai Elohim, end quote, the children of the living God. When it is said, quote, come let us make man in our image, end quote. In, quote, Elohim, end quote, the living creative mind experiences the many universes. It's very long and very confusing. And most of the time he's quoting himself, although there was a biblical quote in there. So, all right. We're going to use multiple concepts, including the TVA from Disney's Loki series, because I think this hierarchy that he's talking about sounds an awful lot like the TVA. We're going to use those things as well as some other things to make J.J. Hertog's excessively esoteric work not soteric. Okay. I'll be critiquing his premises and, offering a little guidance. Compassionate is in here. Us to you as well. Okay, so this key focuses on the power of the Elohim. Okay, now the full reading is available on this channel. If you want to listen to it before you watch this, stop now, go back. Or if you want to listen to it after, or you don't have to listen to it at all. It doesn't matter. But the full reading is available on this channel. So we're just going to hit some highlights. Okay. All right. So his explanation of this very, very long key is, this key is given as the 8th key of infinite paradise sun universes. It tells of the Elohim, the supreme creative order of the Lords of Light, who come from different dimensions of creation to create man in the image of the higher sun systems, S-O-N. Okay. Again, he's referencing this hierarchy. I mean, is it just me? If I think of like divine entities and things that are more evolved than us, that are more divine than us, that are more perfect than us, why does it have to sound like an office place, right? Like you have the baseline people, and then you have like the supervisors, and then you have middle management, and you have the way he's explaining it always sounds like the TVA. It always sounds like an office. I want to talk to HR because this is nuts. It's nuts to me. It's just me. I don't know. If anybody else feels that way, let me know. I just don't think that higher powers have to have a Christ over self office. It just sounds silly. Okay, so verse 7. Man can then function as a host to the Elohim when he embodies many different galactic vehicles rather than just one higher self. One expanding light body will be centered within many incarnation channels. Now, I had an issue with man can then function as a host. I've said before that some of this sounds a bit parasitic. It sounds like we might need an exorcism if this happens, because, first we're biotransducers and we have to give up ourselves to be inhabited by. It just sounds a little creepy. Adric says, I want to speak to the manager. Yes. Hi, Spain Man. Thanks for being here. So maybe this is what he meant by giving up your ego and the self, right? That and giving up your physical body. Remember, he talked about that. So when you become a biotransducer, you can be possessed by this other entity. Hmm. Mm, mm. I'm not. I'm not digging that. I'm hopeful that that's not what they're trying to bring in. Okay, so then he says a 9. This similitude. Oh, that's a long one. Verisimilitude can be achieved once the light energy of the 5 bodies has been aligned to the overself body by way of a layush, LAY-OO-ESH, loosh, pillar of light, which in turn must be aligned with the coherent field of the living Christ body so that the overself is free from the solar logos. The Christ light permits the Christed overself to function in as many as 9 dimensions in our local universe as a super species creation. Well, I brought this up before, so I'm going to bring it up again. Okay, but before I do, I see that Adrian said something. I think the fact that it is represented as an office is an example of why it's all made up. Why would gods and angels themselves? Yeah, why? Right. Like, why are they acting like us? Aren't they supposed to be more evolved? Right? Like, this is a one time I'm going to walk into something and ask for the manager. Like, it's happening. It's nuts. Okay. So I've talked about this before. Loosh. Okay. So I want to talk about it again because he's bringing it up again, right? When he talks about, what does he say? This verisimilitude can be achieved once the light energy has been aligned to the overself by way of a loosh, pillar of light. Okay, so meaning loosh creates a pillar of light that then this other entity can be downloaded in you. Now, according to Hertalk, and looking at his definitions in the back, right, in the glossary, he says loosh is a Hebrew-based word, he made it up, that means pillar of light. So it's a pillar of light from a pillar of light. Wait, that doesn't make sense because he says the loosh creates a pillar. Okay, whatever. So he says it's a Hebrew-based word that means pillar of light, an energy projection of light used by the brotherhoods to communicate with the faithful using harmonics of light. Okay, so he's saying the loosh is this light rod where other entities can be downloaded in you. And it's also a way for them to communicate with the faithful. They use loosh. Okay. Oh, arrange themselves in the ways that we do. Yeah, that's what Adrian was saying. Why would they, if they're gods, why are they arranging themselves in the ways that we do? It doesn't make sense. So this is what he says it means. Okay. But the word loosh has been around for a very, very long time. So this is another example of Hertalk taking a word that already has a definition and giving you a different definition to try to make you think that it's something else. The bait and switch, right? Don't we see this all the time in religion, in religious circles, politics, education? I mean, we see it all the time. It's the bait and switch. You're like, no, 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 that's not what that means. And it's like, but words mean something, right? I'm very big into words mean something. Words have meaning. Words have power. Okay. So just telling me that a word means something that it doesn't mean I'm going to believe you, because the word loosh has been around a long time. Okay. So, and we've talked about it before, but I'm going to reiterate it here because he's saying that it means a pillar of light as a way for this other entity to download into your body and as a way for them to connect with each other. Okay. Hertalk likes to change the meaning of words. I already said that, right? Now, what is loosh actually? What is the actual definition of loosh? It is an emotional, spiritual energy that is or can be fed upon by higher dimensional beings without the consent or awareness of humans. Now, this phrase has been around for a very long time. Mystics talked about this a long time ago. This is when we talk about incubus and succubus, that the psychic energy that they're pulling off of you. I mean, how in even in this day and age, we're around people sometimes that just exhaust us because it feels like they're sucking our energy out of our bodies. But it's this sort of parasitic, right? It's always been viewed as this parasite, this entity, this incubus, this succubus, some other higher dimensional being or outer dimensional being is sucking your psychic energy out of you. And that psychic energy is called loosh. So him saying that loosh is a pillar of light and it's just a way to get this thing to download inside of you and a way for us to talk. Okay, well, we already know that it's the thing that the parasite grabs a hold of. So you saying that this higher dimensional creature wants to use loosh to inhabit my body, that's parasite. Okay. Now, what's cute is if you guys have seen Monsters Inc., that movie was based upon the concept of loosh because really emotional feelings creates more psychokinetic energy. We have more energy, right? If we're angry, if we're scared, if we, if we have a big feeling, as they say in the field, if we have this a big feeling, we have a lot of psychic energy or psychokinetic energy, right? And it has to go someplace. That's why we have emotional outbursts, because this energy has to be expelled. So the movie Monsters Inc. is actually based on these concepts, right? That kids will put off a lot of this energy when they're scared. So if you guys haven't seen it, Monsters Inc. is like this company, sounding familiar, right? Of monsters whose job it is, they clock in, they clock out. Their job is to be like the monsters in the closet, the monsters in the bed, and scare the kids. And when the kids get scared and scream, it fills up these like battery packs that then they take back. And those batteries are what operates everything on their side, right? Now, eventually they figure out that laughter and love and joy actually creates more energy. It's all energy, but it's a kids movie. We had to have a happy ending. So that's what that's based on. Loosh is the energy that they're harvesting, right? And so there's always been thoughts that the movie, The Matrix, we are batteries. It was us plugging into the matrix, and then we're given challenges and things fall apart and we fall in love and we get our heart broke and we lose our job, and then we're happy and we're plugged into the matrix to have all of these emotions so that they can harvest the loosh. They can harvest that energy parasitically, right? So every time Her Talk brings it up, it's like you're using parasitic words to describe this situation that you say is this great thing, right? It already sounds parasitic, and then you use the word loosh, and we know that it's parasitic at that point. We know that you're using our psychokinetic energy to download some parasitic entity into us. This is what he's talking about, because words mean something. You can't just say it means something else, right? They call it energy vampirism. That's where we get incubus and succubus. They call it psychic harvesting, interdimensional parasitism. These are all the things that go along with that concept of loosh that has been around for a very, very, very long time. Yeah, neutrinos. Yeah. If you a lot of times when you look at metaphysics and even like deep mysticism, you can find connection points to like quantum physics. Quantum physics and metaphysics are very similar. You can find those connection points, you know? It's just different words for the same thing. Even the descriptions are the same thing, it's just the label is a little bit different. Now for him, same label, different definition. So it's not the same thing. Yeah, it is. It is some Get Out stuff. It was a good movie. But oh, but I'm also thinking you might be referencing, like, horror movies where they're like, "Get out," and then everybody should run out the front door, right? Did you guys ever see that, so I'm a Gen X, so that, Richard Pryor skit where he was talking about if Black people starred in these movies, the movie would be, like, 5 minutes because they'd go into the new house and they'd be looking around, "Hey, the house is beautiful. Oh, I love this, and I love this, and I love it's so great, it's so great." And then, you see blood in the toilet and somebody goes, "Get out," and they all leave, and that's the end of the movie. So that just reminded me of. Oh, you got it. Okay. Yeah, with Jordan Peele. Yeah. But anyway, that's what that reminds me of. So we first learned about Loosh in 1971. Now, Hertog wrote this book in 1973, and he's supposedly part of the metaphysics, field, right? He would know what Loosh means. Why? Because we learned about Loosh from Robert Monroe at the Monroe Institute. Do you guys remember who that is? I've talked about him on here before because the Monroe Institute is still in operation today. By the way, you get extra credit points if you tell me what show was based on the Monroe Institute. And it's recent. It's a very recent show, okay? So, but we talked about the Monroe Institute and we've talked about CIA operations because the Monroe Institute is, first of all, Robert Monroe is the one who was heavily involved in these specific CIA operations. But the Monroe Institute is where some of these things happened. And this is like the Stargate, the MK Ultras. This is like the psychic experiments, the LSD experiments, the psychic spies, the telekinetic spies, all of this came from the Monroe Institute. And this went on with the CIA for a very, very long time. And there are things that they proved through all of their experiments that they don't tell any of us about. They just declassify forms and then they put them out there and then nobody wants to believe it. So as an example, one of the things that they prove through all of their experiments is that reality is a toroidal field. So you guys can look up, I didn't have it pulled up what a toroid looks like, but it's a toroidal field. It is a matrix. It's a simulation. So these are things that they prove, but Robert Monroe and the Monroe Institute was integral in all of that. Compassion says roll credits about the scary movie. Right. Like the end, it's a 2-minute movie. Yeah, Eddie agrees. So the show Stranger Things was based on the Monroe Institute and what was going on in Montauk with kids. Kids would disappear and somehow some entity, some monster, something ended up in the forest and even more kids disappeared. So this is what the show Stranger Things was based on experiments that were going on at the Monroe Institute in Montauk. So interesting. If you've never seen it, it's interesting to watch. But these are the kind of experiments that they were doing. Okay. So one of the things that Monroe said through all of his experiments, now this doesn't come from the CIA, this comes from Monroe, okay? And the Monroe Institute is still in operation today. Oh, Adrian says, well, hell, I'd never have gotten that question right. Yeah, it's relatively new, but it's creepy when you realize that it's based on true stuff. So Monroe said the Earth is a farm. and humans are the livestock. And loosh is a highly prized commodity amongst higher dimensional beings. Huh. This sounds like the Matrix, right? That we are all plugged in to this toroidal field, and some other entity is harvesting our psychic energy. Okay. But then they do all of these experiments and they use different words for the same thing. They say toroidal field, they say loosh, right? In the movie, it's the Matrix, and we're all batteries. Okay. These beings, which has to be who her talk is talking about. These beings orchestrate conflicts, war, trauma, and suffering to maximize the loosh production. They don't want any of us emotionally stable because they get the most loosh out of it. They charge their batteries the most by the most heinous things going on. Okay. Loosh is the battery energy of the Matrix. So now that you know what loosh means and her talk is talking about it, I don't think the dude that came to talk to her talk was one of the good guys when he was saying, this is what needs to happen in the name of the Holy Father. We need to be able to inhabit your bodies and download ourselves, and you give up your ego and become a biotransducer for us. And we're going to use your loosh to do so. That does not sound benevolent in the slightest. So, one of the things that always interests me about loosh, though, is that loosh is stolen, it is harvested. Okay. That's the primary way of these higher dimensional beings or higher evolved or whatever beings is they steal it, they harvest it through all this trauma, right? But the other way that they get it, so the other way to give higher dimensional beings your loosh consensually is through worship. Because when we worship and we praise a being, we are expending and we are pointing a ton of psychic energy towards that being, whether we're begging for forgiveness, begging for health and healing, or praising its name. We're sending tons of emotional psychokinetic energy towards that being. And so this is a way that they get it easily. They just convince you. They convince one generation of you that they're a god and they're benevolent. And then we spend 5,000 years just freely giving our loosh over. Okay. Something to think about. Okay. So verse 20. They can project their minds into the bodies or into the chemical plasma of subspecies life habitation to perform the physical operations of the superspectrum light consciousness. He just said they download into the subspecies, the human, whatever, so they can physically move the body. That's what he just said. They can project their minds into the bodies or into the chemical plasma of subspecies life habitation to perform the physical operations of the light consciousness. So they can download into you and take over your body and do stuff because they have important work to do. They just get to move your body and do whatever they want, right? So it is possession. This is what he's talking about. This is possession. Okay. So then he says, this is the last verse in here. He says, yield yourselves up to the Father and become united with the brotherhoods in acquiring wisdom from the secret works of the Spirit of truth, and become like free brethren in spirit, that you may be like unto the Elohim, lords of light, and not like slaves and partners of the physical substance of this passing mansion world. So that is consensually entering the Matrix. Give yourselves up. Quit, the physical world sucks. You shouldn't have to, Being alive is dumb. Let us have your body. That's literally, yeah, like an avatar. But, here's what I think, Eddie, is that like we are essentially avatars, right? Because we have some sort of consciousness, spirit consciousness that animates this meat sack that we live in, right? Because when the spirit consciousness leaves the body stops animating and it starts rotting, right? So there's some sort of spiritual consciousness that is downloaded into our meat sack in utero at some point. The Jews say it's when the baby takes the first breath is when they get their consciousness. Other people say it's from the moment of conception, although there's not enough cells there to do anything. Other people say it's at a certain point, but whatever. This spirit consciousness is downloaded into the meat sack, and then we only have a certain amount of time to complete whatever tasks it is, or whatever reason we decided to come here, whatever reason we wanted to be in the avatar, whatever reason we wanted to experience Earth, right? Or we were put here, somebody downloaded us into it. But the difficult part is we all have amnesia and we don't know why we came here. And a lot of us are like, why would I even come here? Why would I even do this? Who would do this? Because we don't know. So, in a lot of ways, we are an avatar. So when he's saying, give up your ego, give up yourself, and give up your physical body, they're saying, get out of the way. We want your body. We want to use your physical body to do things on the earth. It's like Avatar, except somebody's coming in to push you out of your own body. Adric says, will it be painful? I would assume it would at the very least be psychically painful. I would assume, I think the thing is that what he is trying to do now, whether this is what the dispensationalists are after, I kind of think it is, but whether this is what they're after or not, I think the reason why the dispensationalist Zionist type people are doing what they do, and why her talk is saying it in the way that he's saying it, is because we have to give consent. How many times does he say, agree to the, we talked about, when we talked about his stuff several times, about that is a choice that doesn't sound like a choice. Choose this or die, right? Choose this or, die a painful death. Choose this or, what do religious people say? Burn in hell, or, they say all these things. It's a choice without a choice. I think they have to have consent. And that's the thing. They have, and the man is their manufactured consent in this world. And I think you have to keep your head on a swivel where spirituality is concerned, because for a lot of people, they're taught that spirituality is anti-intellectual, that it is anti-educated, or that it means that you are ignorant or dumb or don't understand science, or, we see it as something that doesn't exist. It is not important, ghosts don't exist, or this doesn't exist, or what are you talking about? This woo-woo vibration stuff. Science says all those things exist, right? And so we don't realize that we're creating our own cognitive dissonance when we read about energy, when we read about these electromagnetism and things like that in science. But then when it comes to people, that's just some woo-woo religious nonsense, right? Even though science can measure the energy that comes off of us. And they have done the most recent experience when they were measuring the electromagnetic energy that comes off of us, the most positive energy that comes off of us, it comes off of us so much that it affects the people around us in a positive way, is authenticity. They thought it was going to be feelings of love. It's actually being your authentic self, which is like a self-love, right? They can measure this stuff, but then so when we have these kind of, I'll just call them like quote unquote spiritual attacks, we all think it's woo-woo nonsense bullshit, even though scientifically, a lot of this stuff is proven. Scientifically, quantum physics already proved that we live in a matrix. They proved that all of reality is about your perception, right? They have proven that we are a consciousness inside of a meat sack. Everything that these ancient spiritualities all agreed on, science proved. So I think the reason I say all that is because I think you have to keep your head on a swivel. And it's kind of like, the disclaimer in the beginning. Just because you think it's bullshit doesn't mean that you ignore it. It's much better to protect yourself. I'm just saying, adults can do what adults do. I'm just putting that out there just because you don't believe it doesn't mean it's not real. Hi, Leon. He's going to catch up. Addie says Body Snatchers was a movie. Yes, it does sound like Body Snatchers. And I bring up Body Snatchers a lot about certain groups of people who steal the identity of other groups and then reap the benefits of that. Hi, JB Designs. Thanks for being here. So, just something to think about. These are just things to think about. Just talking about stuff. So that last little bit sounds like that is consensually entering the matrix to become a battery for them. It sounds like soul-based busy work. We're all going to go to work for them, right? Empower their machines. Her talk describes soul contracts and karmic ledgers. Like there's all this paperwork, right? Which it sounds a little bit like the Akashic records, which is another way to talk about the collective unconscious, Jungian collective unconscious. The Akashic records are, those have been around forever. This concept we've talked about a lot. The Akashic records are a metaphysical library. So it's like an energy library of all knowledge containing the energetic imprint of every soul's journey, past, present, and potential futures. This concept comes from ancient spiritual traditions and has been popularized in modern thought. So the name Akashic comes from the Sanskrit word akasha, meaning ether or sky. It's in the ether, okay? It's energetic. It's the fifth element. That's what the ether is, by the way, that holds space and vibration. It's a universal field of consciousness that stores all information. Like this particular matrix, toroidal field, experience, whatever, all of the information about this place is here energetically. So when you have an idea, let's say, it's because you were thinking about that, and it's sort of like tuning a radio. You tuned your mind to a set frequency that then you can get information from that field, okay? Science calls it the quantum field, okay? This is where everything is. Every electron is the same electron. It's all there. There are no different electrons, okay? It's all in one place. So it's a cosmic hard drive, okay? It's where all the information of everything all the time is. So that's what the Akashic records are. It is the collective unconscious. We all have the ability to tap into it. This is why, have you ever had this happen to you where like you have a great idea, like maybe for an invention or something, or you don't even have your phone around, like your phone's not listening, okay? You have a great idea for an invention and you're like, oh yeah, this would be so cool and I could get it made. And then you kind of forget about it. And then like 3 months later, you read somewhere that somebody invented the same exact thing. And it's a brand new invention. Or like three people came out with the same thing all at once. It's because once your brain tunes itself to a specific idea and is pulling stuff, you get these great ideas. You are bestowed because you tuned your mind into it. But other people can too, because all the information is there. Hopefully that makes sense. Cosmic Google. Yes, it is the cosmic AI. All the information is there all the time. Eddie says, yep, the ether, if you can tune in on it. Yes, yes. Like Wi-Fi. Yes, yes. Okay. Adrian says, it only always happens to me. It's a great idea. And then somebody else does it like immediately. And isn't that so frustrating? Because you're like, I had this new novel idea. Nobody's ever had it. Nobody, that I have this great idea for an invention and you cannot wait on it. And what's interesting is, like for me, I see that the time is speeding up. Like somebody would have an idea for an invention and you probably have a couple of years to get it rolling. Now it seems like somebody has a great idea and like 2 months later, somebody else is doing it, right? But it's whoever has the money and the resources, right? And so this is also how, higher casted people, the oppressor class of people can pull ideas as well, and they have the resources to make it happen. So it can be another form of control. The Akashic records contain every thought, word, and action of every soul. It holds karmic imprints, soul contracts, past life experiences, lessons and challenges for spiritual growth, probable timelines based on current frequencies. Kind of is the timeline. Okay, that's the Akashic record. Eddie says, I think in World War II, the globe felt a change or feeling that the war ended. Yeah, I remember reading about that. Like a bunch of people were like, I'm feeling good. I think the war is over. Yeah, I remember reading about that. So what her talks about is enforced morality. It's an external force forcing you to be moral instead of you authentically living by your own value system and your own belief system, right? He says divine law is the arbiter of wishes by some deity, right? I'm a jinn, I'll grant you wishes. It's a psychological trap. Okay. It's a psychological trap. You confess to crimes the system invented. That's what confession is. Confess your sins. You confess to crimes that the system invented because they tell you you are a sinner, you are dirty, and you are diseased. You are less than, you are not perfect, and there's really nothing redeemable about you. The only reason you will be redeemed is if you give yourself to a higher deity, try to meet an impossible standard, and then out of his benevolence, he might redeem you, he might not. You're going to have to be perfect and worship him. Worship and praise him all the time. Sounds creepy to me. So, according to ancient writings that we believed for hundreds of thousands, maybe even a million years, and I'm talking humans, right? According to ancient writings that we believed for hundreds of thousands or a million years, we were created by sky beings. Christianity's only been around for a couple of thousand, 2,000. That's nothing. It's a blip. It's a blip. Judaism's been around, 5,000, maybe 5,000 years. Blip. It's a nothing burger. Islam hasn't been around very long at all. It's a blip. All these belief systems, They're not this hundreds of thousands of years globally. And we didn't call each other up, right? Or send each other emails. It took 1,000 years to walk across a continent, to migrate. So, but we knew, ancient people knew for 1,000,000 years that we were created by beings who came from the sky. Sometimes that story was we were created by them to be good laborers, to work for them, or even enslaved for them, depending on how you look at it. But Spainman says, the further I get away from that, the crazier it sounds, right? You start to see the illogic. Yeah. Spainman says, it's as if God wants to play a little game. Do you want to play a little game? There is no winner, right? Like, you can get out of your handcuffs anytime you want, but the key is behind your eyeball. That is religion. Okay. So here's the thing, right? In all these ancient beliefs and all of these ancient writings, those beings gave us their divine spark, that spiritual, psychic consciousness, right? Be it to work well for them or what, but it gave us consciousness. It gave us creativity and capacity for more reasoning. It's the essence of the source, of whatever the source of that spark is. It's also our key to liberation. And liberation is the one thing that our current modern religious systems absolutely do not want us to have, is liberation. Everything they do is to fight a person's liberation. So in the Enuma Elish, which is the Anunnaki, okay, so that's Mesopotamian, Sumerian stuff, the Anunnaki, which are the sky beings that came down. Now, Zachariah Stitchin said this is actual aliens, but my thing always is, so are angels, okay? They're all extraterrestrials. So I really don't care what you call them. Angels, aliens, the same thing. They came down from the sky from somewhere else. Okay. In the Enuma Elish, the Anunnaki create humanity to bear the workload of the gods. Okay. They brought their servants, the Igigi, but there was too much work to be done. So they decided to create worker bees, worker people. So they took some hominids and they put a divine spark in it. Now, they trial and error a couple times. They kind of messed it up and made some really gross things. But they eventually got human beings. Okay. In Genesis, Yahweh breathes his spirit into clay, right? Now, but Yahweh bans knowledge. Okay. The Anunnaki didn't ban knowledge. They didn't want you to know everything, but they still shared a whole bunch of stuff. In the Apocryphon of John, Yaldabaoth creates humans. Okay, that's the demiurge, and his mother Sophia secretly gives humans the divine spark. Okay, ancient tech like the Great Pyramids resonator function, or the Ark of the Covenant, or the Tower of Babel, all of these things weren't just machinery. All of those things amplified this divine energy that we had, this spark that's in the ether, right? The elite, the they that are the they, fear rediscovery of the true energy technology because we knew how to use it before. We could pull it out of the ether because if we pull it out of the ether again, if we pull this energy, it bypasses their systems of control. They can't commodify everything if we rediscover what we knew in ancient times, back when we believed these other things. Okay. It gets us away from money, dependency on the systems and the structure. It gets us away from organized dogmatic religion, puts us more into spirituality, more authenticity, more being a human and not seeing ourselves as disgusting, gross, diseased sinners, right? Yes, Spain Man, that is one of the things they created was minotaurs. So The elites push for transhumanism. We're hearing so much about this, right? They push for transhumanism, which is like a synthetic hijack. It's their version of a godhead. It's them creating life in their image. But organic divinity is still going to outclass it every time because we're way more powerful than they tell us that we are. Why do they have to tell us that we're dirty, gross, sinning, diseased, pus pockets? Why do they have to degrade it? I mean, and I'm talking everything in politics, religion, education. It's always medicine. It's always how you're broken. Psychology, it's always how you're broken. Why do they have to break us down so much? Liberation. Okay? The spark that we have, this spiritual consciousness, this divine spark, the thing that makes us humans will be the way that we regain control and not allow these parasitic creatures to steal our energy anymore. Just my thoughts. Take it or leave it. Do with it what you will. Okay, so coming up this Sunday, I'm continuing on the bloodlines. So this one is going to be Ham's bloodlines, which is a Denisovan admixture. Now, the Hamites and the Shemites did mix some, but not enough to become one specific line. So we're going to talk about the Hamites because the gift that they were given was technology. And so we're going to talk about the evidence of that growing throughout migration patterns, DNA evidence, all of those kind of things to talk about the Hamites this Sunday. We'll continue with the keys of Enoch next Wednesday. So I hope you guys have a good Wednesday. Spain Man's got a question. So everybody hold on a second. Do you believe in the Great Awakening that many say mankind is on the cusp of? I do not believe we're on the cusp of. I think it's already started. And I say that because my parents, my grandparents, we have been around metaphysics for 40, 50 years. Okay, this is what I was raised hearing about. And it was a very tight-knit group. People who got into metaphysics and tried to teach these kind of things ended up unalived. Especially if they did it in great numbers and it would usurp the political establishment, or they would be locked away in insane asylums like you could not speak it. What I see is that it's steady growing and it's growing exponentially, that it doesn't matter what the red pill is that gets you to start becoming awakened, whether it's looking at the racial inequalities or the caste system of the West, if it's realizing that your religious beliefs were not what you thought they were, if it's realizing the dogmatic structure of the education system. It seems as if once you're red pilled, all of these things will start coming, and more and more and more and more people are talking about things. And as soon as you think you have figured something out, you will realize somebody else figured it out too. And we're all talking. And it's okay that they figured it out first because we're all talking. And it's very important. So I definitely believe in it. The other thing is that there is a CIA program from the first time they made a supercomputer, and the governments were trying to get it to future predict a lot of things, and they would have it go farther out, farther out, farther out, but it could only go to a certain time frame. Now we don't know what that time is, this specific year, this specific time frame. We don't know when it is, but what would happen is that the supercomputer predicted this sort of psycho-spiritual revolution of the people and the fall of the West. And so what the governments have been doing for a very long time is to input information, upgrade the computer constantly, but keep inputting information to try to stop the fall of the West. And the last I knew, the last, information that was released, it always the West falls with this psycho-spiritual revolution. So I totally believe in it, and I'm hip on it, and I love it. Okay. Hi, Addo Art. Yeah, there's many ways to wake up, right? And once you awaken, you're going to look at a lot of things. Don't stay stuck. Question. That's why they say question everything, right? And any teacher, any good teacher is going to tell you to question them too. That's why I say things like, take it or leave. This is just my opinion. This is what I say. This is how I look at things. And please look this up and look at this and look at that. Because remember, we've talked about this before too. On the path of spiritual enlightenment, the Buddhists say, if you meet Buddha on the road, on the path, kill him. And what that means is that you need no one to guide your path. It's your path. Get everybody else off the road. So it does sound hopeful, Spain Man. And that makes me hopeful, right? It's just like anything, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But even the supercomputer says we prevail. So I'm hip to it. All right. So hopefully you guys can be there this Sunday for the Hamites show. I think people will really like it. It's interesting. That will put us all the way through those 3 bloodlines because we've done Japheth, we've done Shem. Now we're going to do Ham. And then we're going to talk about the other bloodline because there's actually 2 more that one has been genocided. The other one's still around. In fact, genetic evidence of that person was found in none other than the United States in the last year. Interesting. So we'll talk about those other 2 bloodlines after the Ham bloodline. But I may take a quick detour into talking about the fish people of ancient times because it's very interesting. So hopefully y'all can be there for that. I hope you have a great 4th of July, no matter what you do with that. I hope you have time to spend with people that you care about. And I'm going to show you a picture of my dog. Please like the video if you haven't already. It really helps the algorithm to know what kind of things you like. Share where you think it's appropriate, especially to someone who you think needs to hear it. And don't forget to check out some of the wilder Pivot Point Wednesday shows. And last, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to break down complex concepts that make the esoteric not soteric, helping you on your journey to become your most authentic self. By subscribing, you'll join a community that thrives on curiosity and growth, and you'll never miss out on insights and some wild discussions. Let's uncover the universe together.